Thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time, and we always enjoy meeting with you. Melissa, if you want to go stop screen sharing so everybody can introduce themselves real quick. Thank you very much. So I know most of you, and if I don't, it's nice to meet you. My name is Pamela Hill, and I'm a vice president at Bluestone and Hockley, as well as the director of the CAM department, Community Association Management. And I've been with the company for 20 years and 5 months. Love this industry, and I learn something new almost every day. So I was hoping that our team members could also introduce yourselves. You can just take turns. I'll start at the top of my list. Melissa?
Everybody, I'm Melissa Browning. I am Pam Hill's assistant, and I also help with operations in our department. I've been with Bluestone and Hockley for 3 years now, but I've been in the industry for over 10 years. So I know the ins and outs of HOAs, but just like Pam, I learn something new almost every single day.
Yeah. Kim.
Hi, good morning. I'm Kim Adolph. I'm a community association manager with Bluestone and Hockley. I've been in the industry over 25 years and with Bluestone since last August. And I will echo what Pam and Melissa said. Love this industry. It's just something new every day.
Let's see, Taylor. Thank you, Kim.
I'm Taylor Coakley. I am the manager of Encore Condominiums. I have been in property management for 7 or 8 years now. And I've been with Bluestone for almost a year now, and I love it. We've got a great team and a great company, and yeah.
Thank you, Taylor. And Victoria, who is the newest member of our team.
Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. My name is Victoria. I started with Bluestone and Hockley in November. However, I've done several management positions throughout the course of my career, and I am so excited to be here. Everyone, I'll echo what Taylor said. Everyone that I work with is incredible. We work with some of the best vendors, and yeah, I'm excited. Happy Wednesday.
Your client, Ray, is giving you a thumbs up, Victoria.
I see that. Hi, Ray. Good to see you.
So are there any owners that want to introduce themselves?
Yeah, or I'll just pound on the door or call me if I don't respond, but yeah, anytime. 5 minutes.
Anybody want to introduce themselves?
Sure, I will. I'm Mike Gallagher. I've been a board member for about a decade at the Dawson Station condo behind, and been with Bluestone and Hockley for several years. And I just have one tip for anybody that's new to this business. Join Community Association Institute, CAI. They have a wealth of training programs that will help anybody get a running start on all the fun and interesting issues that come associated with this lifestyle.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. Good tip.
Hello, good morning. My name is Larissa Thomas, and we are new members. We're going to join in June 1st. So it's Arbor Station, and I'm a president. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura, for joining us.
I'm Ray Dunnington. I live at the Huntington condominiums, and I've been doing work around here ever since I moved in 2003. And a couple of years ago, Bluestone and Hockley became our managers. So they said basically outside is our responsibility, and you need to be our employee if you're going to be working on our responsibility. So I became an employee of Bluestone and Hockley. Happy to be a member. I don't do a whole lot of hours, but I do work. Thank you.
Ray has also served on the board there. Anybody else? No obligation whatsoever. So
Julia introduced herself in the chat. She is currently out of the country with kind of iffy Wi-Fi, but she said she's very happy to be here, and she's the board president for Irving Street Lofts.
yes, have fun. Juliet. Okay, let's get started, Melissa. So many of you guys are veteran homeowners within your community. So a lot of this will be review. I want everyone to feel comfortable to chime in, to ask questions. You know, we provide these classes for you as our clients, and we're so thankful that you join us and want to know more about how to be an owner or, you know, community. We offer classes too for board members. So again, some of this will be review, but I want your feedback as well. Throughout the whole class is fine to just let us know when you have a thought or a question. Next slide. So one thing, you know, that comes to my mind when I move into a new house, whether it's in an HOA or any community, is to meet your neighbors. You know, that is your community, and you know, it's been my experience, you make it what you want. So you can,
No.
Yes, Jack? Okay. So, you know, just, I think it's really important when you live in a neighborhood that you enjoy it, that your neighbors know you, you can take care of each other in the event of an emergency. So that's my first thought. And also, as an owner of an HOA, it's really important that you attend board meetings. There's oftentimes, most times, an open forum section that you can give input and ask your questions. I think the most important reason is to just be informed. It is always surprising to me as a community manager when owners are you know, unfortunately not paying attention, and large events or issues or association concerns come up, and they just are not apprised along the way. And believe me, I know we are all so busy in life and we have so many commitments, but I would highly, you know, recommend that you engage in your community and attend board meetings regularly. Reviewing the governing documents. So each one of you, and I know most of you on here know this, you have purchased a unit that is tied by your title to an HOA. So that is called an encumbrance on your title. And when each of you purchased, you also signed on the dotted line that you would take care of and maintain the property commonly with all of your other owners in your nonprofit corporation. That's what you bought into. But there's also a set of governing documents, and those are commonly known as the CC&Rs, bylaws, and community rules. There are a few additional names or documents, and those would be, instead of CC&Rs, occasionally they're called declarations. And the developer of your community is called the declarant. And then to expand a little bit, in addition to community rules, from time to time, your board members will adopt resolutions that are more formalized to address bigger issues. The most common resolutions are the collection resolution, the enforcement resolution, which gives your association the authority to fine when there are violations. And an insurance resolution is another one that's really important, but not all communities have that one. So the bylaws and the CC&Rs are the recorded documents. And so whenever you purchase a unit and the title, you do a title search, the governing documents will pull up, and so you have full disclosure on what you're buying into. The community rules and the resolutions are not recorded. The board has the authority to change those from time to time, and so but they're still considered the governing documents. They're just not a recorded document. Next slide, please. So what did you buy into? So there are a few, I'm not positive if we have a a Washington owner here today, please let me know if you do. If you are, we manage several Washington communities, but primarily we do manage Oregon communities. And there is a condominium act and a Planned Community Act within the Oregon statutes. So knowing what type of property you have, because some people don't know if they live in a condominium or a planned community. And we can tell you, it might look like a condominium, but it may be a planned community. And it's a different, from a technical standpoint, it's a little bit different type of ownership. But in a planned community, if it's not a single family home, generally it's still maintained by the association. So the condominiums are primarily, the percentage of ownership is recorded in the CC&Rs. You know what percentage of ownership you have in your community. And generally, and I speak in very general terms because every set of documents is different, but you all have commonalities. So in a condominium generally, all exterior building components, all exterior land and landscaping belongs to the association, and including generally the attic space, the crawl space. Those may be limited common elements maintained by the association and exclusive use to you, but oftentimes it's still part of the condominium association and its responsibility. And then in a condominium, you generally will own a percentage of the 100%. Some condominiums have an equal monthly payment, and most condominiums have a tiered based on your percentage of ownership. Any questions about condominiums?
Doing really.
Okay. Planned communities. Oh, thank you, Melissa. So we did give a bullet point for single family homes, but single family homes are also part of the planned community. So if your association is not identified as a condominium and regulated under the Oregon Condominium Act, which is ORS 100, then it falls in the planned community. All single family homes, all townhome style buildings that are not condos, also those are planned communities. And there is the Planned Community Act in the Oregon statutes as well. And so part of our job and challenge is to know what the association is responsible for and what the owners are responsible for. And so we would challenge you to find that out as well, but we always take, that question every single day when it comes to maintenance and architectural requests. So any questions on that so far? One general difference, and I don't want to confuse anyone, I'm just letting you know the difference in ownership. If you have a townhome association and it's not a condominium, so it doesn't have that legal entity and legal ownership of the property, and you are in a planned community, the association generally still maintains all of the landscaping and all of the building components, but you own generally, again, the footprint of your building. As an owner, you would own that, and again, in generalities, but it wouldn't be limited common element to be, inside your attic spaces or your crawl spaces. Those are yours. So the association would only maintain all exterior components, but technically you still own it. So there's a little bit of a difference there. Okay, we can move on. So what's your role? Oh, go ahead.
I had a question about the attic spaces.
Yes.
I did go up there and do some maintenance. I checked for a leak, and when I went up there, I noticed somebody had used the attic space for a little bit of storage for personal things like a rolled up carpet or something that they stored up there. And we kind of went around and around about, actually, the attics are on the, above the 3rd floor. And that space, they said you can't use that as a storage space. So it wasn't really the owner's space to do with whatever they wanted, even though it was above their unit. There's wiring up there, there's ductwork up there, there's fans and stuff. And I don't know, I don't think it was ever really resolved, but I think we kind of considered that it was common area, that it was going to be treated as common area. Like,
Okay.
like in the fire, the stairs outside, you can't store stuff in the stairs outside because they're used as fire escapes. And we don't want anybody running out there and tripping over stuff that's stored there when they're trying to escape from a fire or something. So is there any, do you have any clarification on that? Did we think of it correctly, that it's considered common area and not to be storing stuff up there or putting plants up there?
Yeah, that is definitely going to be individual to your community and your governing documents, but that would be a common conclusion that board members come to, because we can't regulate, individuals if they, I've seen some attics jam-packed with their Christmas decorations or, many other things. And sometimes it doesn't allow for ventilation. So I could see where a board would choose to mandate that. It is generally most of the time common air, limited common element. And so the board would have the authority to make that decision. And
Okay.
I would generally think that's a prudent decision.
Limited common. Okay, that makes sense.
Yes, that
makes
means
sense.
common, it means commonly maintained by your entire association, but it's exclusive use to that owner.
Yeah, I see.
Decks,
Okay,
decks are also
Yeah.
another example of limited common element.
yeah, because I can't go into their unit and access the hatchway if they're not home or anything. That's ridiculous,
Right.
So I can see where the limited common area would be appropriate. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. So
Pam,
within,
Pam, if I could just throw something in very quickly.
yes,
Yeah, just one thing to consider, and I agree with all the foregoing discussion, but if owners ignore the attic space, I mean, we really depend on them periodically to maybe open that hatch if they can do it safely with a ladder and take a look, because oftentimes there can be damage there. And if there's a hard and fast prohibition or discouragement of owners to ever take a peek in there, you can create another problem. So somewhere, I mean, if you want to limit, you can't use it for storage, you might also want to say, however, maybe a couple times a year, it might be worthwhile just taking a look and making sure there's nothing going on, because typically they're all segregated unit by unit. So there's no way that the association can reasonably get in and inspect all the attics without a mammoth coordination job.
yes.
Yeah,
Excellent point, Mike. Excellent
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, there's a
And we have-
firewall. There's a firewall between the units, so you can't go from one to the other and crawl your way all the way down. There's firewalls, there's cinder block walls. So, yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Yes, not all communities have that, though. I've seen communities where you go up into the attic space and you can see, the extent of the whole building. Or I've been in crawl spaces and you could crawl under, throughout the whole building. And that is an excellent suggestion, Mike. And being proactive is always important. We've come across projects, up there doing some, maybe one unit has a repair to do and we find massive mold. And so that kind of triggered an inspection, throughout the property just to make sure attic spaces were in good condition. Oftentimes the dryer ducts, come loose, and that pushes a lot of moisture in there. That's a common cause for mold in the attic space as well. So what's your role? Everyone has a role in a community, and some you volunteer to be, have additional roles, but you're all owners. And so you're expected to maintain all of the governing documents. Your guests, your tenants, they're also expected to know and maintain and cooperate with all of the governing documents. Some people, lots of people actually volunteer to be committee members, and that really helps kind of spread out the efforts that it takes to run a healthy and smooth community. And there's so many different kinds of committees, but most properties or communities have, you know, maybe one of three, which are the most common would be maintenance committee, a landscape committee, pool committee. Some communities have a social committee. Some communities have a financial committee that helps with the budget. So there are a lot of options and for you to get more involved. And the perspective that we take, we like committee members to, kind of get their feet wet with board with community leadership, and so that they can transition onto as a board member and volunteering for that. So it's kind of, a training ground, and because some owners are more apprehensive to just jump right in and be board members. But when you're a committee member, you are working more closely oftentimes with the board. And so you see how much involvement there is, the communication, and you learn from the board members. So if you haven't already volunteered for a committee, all of your communities need committee members. And you get to know your neighbors that way too. And there are board members, obviously. Most of our communities have either 3, 5, or 7 board positions. And that is included in your bylaws as how many your association has, how many positions, and how many years those terms are for. And so we really encourage you to get involved, support your board members, become a board member, take your turn. A healthy community really has all owners, taking turns, and you don't have to be a CPA to be the treasurer or, an engineer to be on the maintenance committee. It takes a lot of effort and just giving your best decisions and in good faith. That's what's important. Then each of you has a community manager. Obviously, we're contracted as your management company. And the manager's role, and this is really important because not everybody understands this. The manager's role is to act as the agent. We don't make up the rules, and generally we're not making the decisions. Your board is making the ultimate decisions, but your community manager is collecting bids so your board can make the decision. Your community manager is the primary contact for all owners, helping the board to organize board meetings, the annual meetings. The community manager is preparing a proposed budget annually, and keeping up with the facilitating the reserve study and your financial review. And so there's a lot of work behind the scenes, and we appreciate being your contracted service. You want to go to the next slide, Melissa? Okay, so your association has elected a board of directors, and then your board of directors generally is who elects each officer, which would be the president, generally the president, the secretary, and the treasurer. Some associations also have a vice president. Some associations also have maybe an assistant treasurer or an assistant secretary. Most do not, and the other roles are considered directors. So all of them are fulfilling a director position, and then again, a handful of directors serve as your officers. And again, they're volunteer positions. They have legal and financial decisions to make for your association. They have a duty to have professional behavior, ethical behavior at all times. That's the number one responsibility, is to have a fiduciary obligation and take on that role on behalf of your whole association, not their individual needs or desires or wants, but the whole association. The other thing that you will hear me say in some classes is that the number one thing that they're responsible for is to protect the asset, maintain the asset. And that takes funds in order to maintain. And so your duty is to pay your dues, and the board's duty is to make good decisions and find the best value to maintain your property, which maintains your asset. So each one of you can sell at the highest dollar amount that you can get. You know, we all want to have solid property values, and that ebbs and flows obviously with the market. And for the last couple of years, it's been out of this, you know, it's been crazy, and property values are just something we haven't seen in a very long time. They've increased, and they seem to be maintaining at this point. As I mentioned, you know, act in good faith and in the best interest of the association. Compliance with governing documents and association rules. So you have that set of governing documents that we talked about, and it is the board's fiduciary obligation and the manager's fiduciary obligation to work within the governing documents. And recently we had an attorney join a board meeting, or actually it was an annual meeting last week, to discuss some of their rules and their governing documents and how the dues were split up because they have 3 property types. And quite frankly, the governing documents don't seem fair. They don't seem intuitive, but they are what the developer recorded. And so in order to change that, it's going to take a very large percentage of the ownership. Well, it's going to take 100% for them to change how those are allocated, because it would affect the dues. And that is an Oregon statute that takes 100%. Most of the time in Oregon, to pass an amendment, which has to be voted on by the owners, it takes 75%. But know your documents, because that percentage sometimes changes. But the board has the duty to fulfill the governing documents. And so that, I think that's important to know as an owner. The communication and engagement, every board, you know, has a responsibility to communicate with their owners. Now, generally, that's our role as well. Your association has hired us to take on a bulk of that communication, but most board members are very engaged and communicating with their fellow neighbors and tenants, renters. So the board is also organizing and attending board meetings. Some board meetings are monthly, some quarterly, and I'm sure you know which ones your association's doing. And sometimes that ebbs and flows. Like larger properties are usually once a month. Smaller properties are usually every quarter. But if you have huge projects, sometimes we'll, you know, bump that up to once a month. So just, we're always sending out the notices. So, you know, pay attention to that so you know when your board meetings are. As I mentioned before, part of our contracted service is to provide a proposed budget, but your board is very intimately involved with knowing the budget. We generally go line item by line item. They're asking questions, and then ultimately the board is approving the budget. We don't approve your budget. So in Washington, there is, instead of having statutes, they have what's called RCWs. And their requirement is they have to ratify their budget, but not here in Oregon. Most communities, most documents authorize the board to approve the budget, but we do have a handful that the owners have to approve the budget. And we have one community that the owners have to ratify the budget. So it's just interesting, and it's our responsibility to know your documents as well. And again, as a reminder, they're volunteers. Give them a pat on the back and a thank you when you see your board members, because they're working hard and they want to make generally want to make the best, experience and community that they can.
Pam, there's a question in the chat. Bill would like to know who enforces the rule violations, the manager or the board?
Well, oftentimes it is a joint effort, and I'll give you some scenarios. We're not boots on the ground. We're not at your community, so we get calls or emails from other owners or your board. And as a management company, what we need, and every single one of your communities has this, it's called an enforcement resolution. And this is very helpful in many ways. So your enforcement resolution also comes with a fine schedule. And that gives all of us, the board and management, the roadmap in which we follow up on violations. And it's important that it's the same, everyone is treated the same and we take the same approach for each violation. So like I said, it's a joint effort because we don't always see them, but we are the ones. Bluestone and Hockley sends the letters. It's confidential. We're not going to tell the violator who called in because we're your professional management company. And so it comes on our letterhead and we follow up. And then we follow up, the first one is a friendly reminder letter. And then the next one, there's generally 3, and then they'll go to, they'll often continue to be fined, or if the fine becomes so large, oftentimes they get sent to the association's attorney for collections. Were there any others, Melissa?
Just that one.
Okay, thank you. Guess I could look. Okay, important documents that I really encourage you to review each year. They are on the individual portal on our website for you. And so as I mentioned, the approved budgets, once that's approved, then each association has a different time of the year that they have their annual meetings. Most annual meetings are in November, and most of the time the board will be presenting the approved budget. Most communities have a fiscal year of January 1st. We have 5 or 6 that are different times, but speaking to the ones with the January 1st fiscal year, we're generally getting started on your budgets in September or October. We need them to be approved by your board in October or halfway through November, because we need to mail them out the last week in November, and then we post them on your individual portal. So you can view those anytime. Any questions regarding budgets? That's kind of a biggie. Financial reviews. So in the state of Oregon, each community is required to do a financial review, to pay for a financial review. Your CPA does the financial review. And if your revenue is more than $75,000, that can be waived. That would have to be an annual vote of 60% of your ownership in favor of waiving it. I think this is primarily to protect self-managed communities, but there has been theft in our industry from management companies. So we, as a manager, I hate putting that $1,800 in your budget because we know our books are clean. But the philosophy from from us as well is we want to protect you, we want to protect us. And so your CPA does a thorough review. This is not an audit. Audits are more like excuse me, I have my daughter's kitties are running around me. I don't know if you can hear that. Anyway, so audits are generally $6,000 to $8,000, and financial reviews are generally smaller communities, maybe 1,500, larger communities, maybe up to 2,500, but that's an annual expense. So rest assured, all you owners, your books are getting a deeper dive look at by a CPA each year. And I think we only have, unless managers of any, I think we only have one that waives it almost every year. Anyway. And those are also posted on the individual portal. We want you to see your money. This is your money. Your association's money is your money. It's not our money. So we want total transparency. Reserve studies. So also an Oregon statute, reserve studies are required to be updated annually. And that is done by a certified reserve analyst. There are several in this area. Your association chooses the one they want. Generally, we'll put that out to bid or take it out for proposal. Your reserve analyst provides those, or reserve analysts provide those. And then your board has chosen their reserve analyst. It changes from time to time, but the first one that they perform will be on site, measuring everything from your roofs to your gutters, siding, and then they compile all of this information into what is called a reserve study. And I hope each of you have looked at your association's reserve study. So what this includes is every single component that your association is responsible for maintaining, from a 3-year to a 30-year replacement. And so they include the general life, or the warranted life of each component. And then each year when we update it, your management company, your manager, is responsible for contacting the reserve analyst. And then we update them on any projects that you've done throughout the year that are capital projects that you used reserve funds for, what the interest rate is that you're earning in your bank account. And that's primarily it once they've got the original reserve study set up. And so it's been an interesting couple of years because projects have skyrocketed, especially roof projects. And so we go look at the reserve study, and let's say a project is estimated to be $400,000 for a roof replacement. We have found that it's been double in the last 2 to 4 years, double what your reserve study calls for. And that means there isn't enough money to do the project. And so some of you have seen serial assessments or special assessments. And so it's just really important that we stay on top of it, that your reserves are funded properly. Personally, I like to see a 70% funded with a minimum, and that's not always the case. I've seen 15% funded, 25% funded, and you're more than likely going to get a serial assessment down the road if that is the case, because all of the components are aging. And it's really important that if an owner lives in their place for 3 years, that they pay for 3 years of the life of every single component. And that's why it's really important to reserve as you go, so that each owner that is moving in and out is paying for their portion as your components are aging. So there are some very expensive things that come up, as you guys know, roofs replacement, siding replacement, asphalt, hopefully there's slurry coating and going on every 6 to 7 years. But beyond that, when it's a full replacement, that can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So sometimes there's, massive mechanical replacements required, elevator replacements. So it's really important that your board is staying on top of the reserve study, and you as an owner need to support, the funds that go into that. Because unfortunately, I've talked to many owners that, they're thinking, well, I'm only going to live here for 3 more years. But I've heard many attorneys say everyone has an obligation to the future owners too. So paying for your share of the life of each component is really important. Any question regarding reserve studies? You can also find that on your individual portal. And as it's updated each year, we're going to upload that so that you have the current reserve study. Ask questions, get involved. Master insurance policy, and I'm going to move along a little faster here. Master insurance policy, so every association has that insurance policy, and it includes what the association is required to insure. Part of it is going to include a liability section. And so if somebody trips or falls or, you know, whatever the association could get sued for, is included. Your insurance policy is also uploaded to your individual portal. So go check that out. And it's important that you're insured properly. And then as an owner, also make sure you individually are insured properly. And I encourage you to take your master insurance policy to your to your insurance agent and make sure you don't have more insurance than you need, and certainly not less insurance than you need. So they work together, and if there is a loss, we'll help you through that. Meeting minutes. Every association should and does take the meeting minutes, and we also have those updated to the portal, and that is once they're approved, and that's by legal opinion. Is once they're approved, they're available for all owners. That is a legal document to your association. So meeting minutes are really important. And then just as a reminder, every one of your associations is a nonprofit corporation. You are in business, so to speak, with every one of your neighbors. And we file a Secretary of State filing for you each year. And then condominiums are also required to hold a certificate through the Oregon Real Estate Agency. We also take care of that for you. Any questions before we move on?
Pam, could I raise an issue about the meeting minutes quickly?
Yes.
I know that the conservative approach is to wait until they're approved, but it always strikes me as really odd that the board makes a decision and that can go into effect immediately. And yet the owners, if we don't post a draft copy of the minutes, the owners really don't have a good way of understanding in real time or even close to real time what's going on. And I really don't understand the legal resistance to labeling the minutes as being draft and putting them up as a way of communicating with the owners a decision that is going into effect.
Mike, I agree with you 100%. And there are communities that only meet quarterly. Although if they're doing something that's really important, a big project or something, they're probably meeting more often. I do agree with you 100%. However, each of our communities has an attorney, as you know, different law firms, different attorneys. Every single attorney I've ever heard an opinion on this is wait till they are approved. But it's ultimately the board's decision. But, you know, as a professional manager, I'm always going to also recommend that you follow the guidance of your association's attorney. So, but from a personal perspective, I agree with you. So, yeah. Okay, next slide, please. So I think this is our last slide. And basically, again, be a good neighbor and be active and positive in your community and volunteer for committees and volunteer for your board. We'd love to work with you, and we're here to guide you. If you want to, you know, do committee volunteering or board volunteering, your manager is available to coach you on what that means. And every community has a different need for involvement. Some are larger, some are smaller communities, and some are just more involved people. And it's interesting, we as managers, we find different pockets of personalities, and all of our communities have different personalities. I think that's one thing we all love about working with communities, and boards rotate, and the board can change. And so we enjoy that as managers. But I think communities can run so beautifully, and it certainly maintains a higher property value when you live in an HOA, than not in an HOA. So I'm open for questions, comments.
I have a couple questions in the chat. The first question that's here is actually regarding insurance. The association had a claim and their master policy rose to 50,000. They said that at that time it was only for 5 years. Who follows up on that policy now that the 5 years are up?
Well, I don't know what your community, which community you're with. We usually, I mean, our job is to put things out to bid as your management company, put things out to bid, always looking for the best value. So ultimately it is us. But sometimes that's also on the board's task list to follow up. But we have a tracking system in our management software. And so we add that to our tasking calendar. So, and I don't know, like I said, I don't know which community this is for. I guess I could look in the chat. But sometimes when communities have too many claims, that's, you know, why you have a higher deductible. And then some communities are moving to a higher deductible, and the owner's policy is responsible to pay that deductible. So if you have any, I mean, I can answer deeper questions if I know more facts about this.
Thank you.
Any other, I'm looking through the chat too. And I agree, Jeannie, I wish more owners and prospective owners would get this info. We used to have an owner class once a month held at our office, and we opened it up for, you know, like between 6 and 7 on an evening. And one of our associates would stay that evening and greet new owners. And we unfortunately didn't get a lot of participation on that either. But again, everyone is so busy. So we want to put it out there, and we're so appreciative that you took the time to join us. Okay.
I'd like to thank you, Pam, for you know, a really good presentation. I was kind of prepared to be old hat, but as you said, it's always a good review, and picked up a few things, and your enthusiasm is most appreciated.
Thank you, Mike. We appreciate, oh my goodness, Mike Gallagher's at almost every CAI event and every event we have here, and is a long-term board member, and we really appreciate that service. Really appreciate that service.
Thank you very much. It really is nice to have 22 people here.
It is.
We rarely have more than 4 or 5 people at our quarterly meetings, and that's kind of distressing. It's 36 units here, and sometimes it's really hard even to get a quorum, so we got to wait the 10-minute blah blah. It's just the involvement is so important.
Yeah, the involvement is so important. But you know, Ray, you're not alone. That's a typical percentage. And what I tell board members, oftentimes it's kind of a compliment that your community is confident that the board is just taking care of things. And so again, everyone's busy, but oftentimes I see that it's because the community is very confident in their board, and so they're not showing up.
Sometimes I got to remember, you know, to keep that fiduciary thing in line, because if it gets down to the point where I'm the only one there, I'm going to give myself a big fat raise. No, that's not fiduciary.
Okay, well, I wish you all the best day, the best week, and hopefully we'll see you in April. Bye. Thanks for joining us.